everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome. I'm Marty Swords-Harrell. I'm the pastor. We're going to be starting, as we always do, with a welcome song, and the words will be on the screen, so feel free to stand up and sing if you feel comfortable doing that. That'd be great.
If you're worshiping with us for the first time or have not been here in a long time, we would like to give you one of our welcome packets. The packets are available in our visitor center at the narthex, or speak to an usher or one of the pastors. We're delighted that you chose to worship with us this morning. Now after worship, we have the Coffee Fellowship Hour, which is out here in Wesley Hall. It's out the door and to the right. There'll be some refreshments and some coffee and some fellowship. Also, our restrooms are out that way. Also, we have a family-friendly restroom and a ladies' room. So, we have quite a few announcements this morning also. First of all, we are looking for volunteers to help with the community meal on Tuesday. It's from 4:30 to 6 p.m. upstairs. We just need some help with serving and to assist the group that does that community meal. There's a sign-up sheet back on the Welcome Center right now, and it'll also be on the office window. Also, upcoming, not too far away, is our worship planning retreat. It's on June 26th. It is listed in the 2020 connection. It's going to start here with lunch at church, followed by the retreat at the Presbyterian Church, and it's from 1 to 4 on Sunday. Anyone who is interested in what we do for the next year, story arcs, book studies, worship themes, questions that you have that you'd like worship to address, please feel free to attend this retreat. Also in your pew is a suggestion sheet for things that you'd like to see covered in worship next year. And I think that's it for my announcements. I have Paul Morano here who has a couple of things he'd like to cover.
Good morning. Thank you, Lee. I have two announcements. One announcement to give you an opportunity to serve, and another one, an opportunity to learn. What better way to serve and learn at the same time? First opportunity to serve has to deal with, we're looking for volunteers for our churro booth. There's information in the bulletin today as well as on the website. The churro booth is basically a fundraiser for the church. We do all of the downtown Troy events, Rockin' on the River, concert series, the Troy Pig Out, River Street Festival. The schedule is on the website. So if you're, like to be outside, listen to good, have an opportunity to listen to some good music, and also get to meet some members of the church community as well as the Troy community, the churro booth is for you. If you're wondering what a churro is a fried dough stick covered in cinnamon sugar. Second opportunity is an opportunity to learn, and the trustees have organized a workshop on church finance and endowment management. The workshop is going to take place on July 9th. We've done this. This workshop is part of our way of looking at church finances and trying to, take a deep dive into church finances and see if there's a way that we can possibly make some changes or even do some things a little bit differently. Church leadership, such as members of staff parish, church council, trustees, and finance are all encouraged to attend this workshop. The workshop is going to be based on the book by Jerry Kuchar, and it will be led by the author of the book, Jerry. Jerry is an Episcopal priest. He lives and works down in New York City, and he has graciously agreed to spend an afternoon with us on July 9th to talk about church finances. Doesn't sound wonderful? Anyway, I have copies of the book with me today. If anybody is interested in reading the book, we strongly encourage folks attending the workshop to read the book ahead of time. This way we can get the most out of our time spent with Jerry. So maybe after, meet me at coffee hour through these doors and to the right afterwards. Thank you very much.
It's a great book.
Good morning. We have so many announcements today, we possibly will have to skip the message. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
She disagrees. We're in the early weeks, as you know, we're in the early weeks of Ramadan, and there are some people in the capital region who are working really hard, and we're kind of joining them to foster a good relationship between the non-Muslim community and Muslim community. And so there are two things about that. There's a sort of a workshop at the Gilderland Library tomorrow afternoon at 5:30, and it's a seminar that's going to be led by a couple of Muslim women to talk about good neighbors and good relations with the community and that kind of thing. Mary Beth and I plan to go. We have a couple of extra seats in our car. So if you're interested in going with us, you can speak to us after the service. I think it would be a good thing for us to do. Secondly, you may have noticed the signs that we have here in front of the church. That's another, the capital area, Council of Churches is sponsoring the signs, and they're available from the council office on State Street, and I think these are spoken for already. But if you look in the bulletin, it'll tell you how to access those from the Council of Churches. So thanks.
We're going to have the talent auction, which we've done in the past, and it's a way to raise money for the church. But I just wanted to say, the most important thing I think about the talent auction is that if you say that you have something you could do for somebody, and somebody takes you up on it, then when you do it, you've made a connection with another human being in our church. And the most important thing about churches, in my opinion, other than a religious reason, is community. So it's really important that you think of something you might want to do for somebody else. You don't need to know who you're going to do it for. And when we come around in a couple of weeks asking you for talents, think of it, and we'll get you together.
Well, now that our business is done, let's get back to the joy of worship. For our faith experience this morning, it's going to be a little different. Instead of hearing from one person up front, I'd like to invite you all to stand, okay? And in groups of 2 or 3, say good morning to your neighbor, tell them your name. And since our theme, as you can see, is Manure Happens. You know, it's the tough stuff in life. It just happens. And maybe it happened to you this week. Maybe some tough stuff happened to you this week. So what we'd like you to do is tell the person next to you, 2 or 3 people, that tough thing and how God helped you get through it. You have a minute apiece, and I'm going to call switch, and then you talk to somebody else. So let's get started. Switch partners. Okay, everybody. I hope you are all able to share how God has helped you this week as you work through that manure that happens sometimes in our lives. But right now, please remain standing while we sing our next hymn, which is Stand By Me. It's in the United Methodist hymnal number 512, or the words are up on the screen.
Like a ship Good morning. The lessons of gardening are many. I don't have to go very far from home or my family to know. Several years ago, when my mother, who is then well past 90, was making one of what turned out to be many emergency room visits due to her declining health, the hospital staff mentioned to her, well, we think it's time for nursing home. Of course, she became more than upset. I had told the emergency room physician, a very caring physician, that she enjoyed her gardening at home, at her apartment. There was a little urban garden down on Washington Street where we lived. And in discharging her, he turned to me and said, people don't tend gardens, gardens tend people. We've all done some gardening. We've cared for a plant perhaps, started some flower seeds, even grown vegetables to provide fresh and delicious nourishment to our family, to our friends. The joy of gardening. You got to do something with all those tomatoes in season, right?
Amen.
Give them away. At times we find the soil becomes a little too acidic or a little too alkaline. As is said, it becomes a little sweet or a little sour. Before chemical products, and even now, wise old farmers would tell us you gotta add some certain animal-like waste, a little cow manure or chicken manure to the soil to get it back to the balance where it should be, get that right chemistry. So you can have flowers burst forth in full bloom, and fruit of trees and vegetables grow wholesome. Our scripture today, the parable of the barren fig tree, from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 13, verses 6 through 9, takes the lessons of good gardening and speaks to us about the virtues of patience and nurturing in all we do, even if a little manure might be involved.
Yeah.
Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it and found none. So he said to the gardener, see here, for 3 years I have come looking for fruit on this fig tree, and I still have none. Cut it down. Why should it be wasting the soil? He replied, sir, let it alone for 1 more year, until I dig around it and put manure on it. If it bears fruit next year, well and good. But if not, you can cut it down.
Can everybody see me and hear me if I stand way down here? I know I'm vertically challenged. It's too bad you are all so shy. I know you had trouble talking to each other just now, and we invited you to share something tough, and your name. That wasn't tough. Something tough that happened to you this week, but thank you so much for sharing, because we all know manure happens, right? Manure happens. I know for myself, we enjoyed very much the Pride Parade yesterday, didn't we, Carrie and Sherry and some others? But you did get very drenched, though, and I was standing there with my umbrella, which was half broken, completely soaked to the skin, and going, dear Lord, we are not taking this personally. And then the other day, how come that parking enforcement guy in the garage next door could not tell that the little sticker that's supposed to be on my little hanger thing that shows that, the church paid for my parking, how come he couldn't tell that sticker was in the glove compartment? I just don't understand. So anyway, Troy, City of Troy will be happy to have my $50 payment for the parking ticket. And I still have this little lousy summer cold, you can hear it. It's really almost gone. But then I did go to the doctor the other day. My husband he said if a cold lasts for more than 7 to 10 days, there might be something else going on. So, we are now living in an apartment. We don't have our own washer and dryer, and those commercial laundries are really hard on buttons. Did you know that? Well, I found this out in a strange way. In the doctor's office, I was sitting there all down because I hadn't planned to go to the doctor, really. And I looked down and my whole blouse was sitting there open. I'm going, okay, I'm just not having a good day. Because manure happens, right? Every once in a while, we just get loaded up with a steaming pile. Go ahead and show us our first little video about that steaming pile that gets loaded on us sometimes. Did you get a steaming pile dropped on you this week? Yeah, it happens, steaming piles. And according to the parable from Luke that Mike just read, the best thing to do with that steaming pile is to plow it back into the soil, right? Isn't that the best thing to do with it? That's what Jesus says. You got to dig it all around, get it in there good, incorporate it into your life, the soil of your life, so that you can begin to bear fruit. Now, how they do this in some farms is that they add a lot of water to the steaming pile so they can actually spray it on the fields. And, sometimes it doesn't, our good intentions for working in our manure into our soil doesn't always work out that way. So show us the other one. Oh. See that out the back? That's the manure. Some of you probably have seen. Anybody seen a manure spreader before? Not that. I know there's an urban church, but it's not that far from the countryside. All right, something wrong. The guy's gonna something not working right. So he's gonna get out and see if we can figure out what's going on here. Uh-oh, not working right. Does that ever happen to you when you're trying to deal well with the manure that happens in your life and, something not right? He's working at it. He's trying to get it to run correctly. Oh! Well, and sometimes when we're doing our best to deal with the stuff that life hands us, we actually make it worse for a little while. Having a sense of humor is a huge help, though, isn't that right? When it comes to dealing with the manure that happens to us, and prayer. I think those two things, if you can have a sense of humor, and if you can take it to the Lord in prayer, those two things are huge. And also what we were talking about earlier about just sharing it in community, like Annie said. This is a place where we can share with each other. This is a safe place to be together, share whatever's going on with us, even if it's really tough. So those are some healthy ways to deal with the manure that happens to us. And of course we know we've seen in ourselves and others some not so healthy ways. Some people isolate themselves when tough things happen and just can't talk about it for a while and hard to draw them out. Maybe you've been there. I'm sure you've had that experience in some of your family. Some people get very depressed. Some people start to medicate themselves, unfortunately, with substances or with overwork, whatever numbs you. People will do that. And you know what? The whole of daytime TV, and when I'm on the Y, at the elliptical at the Y, I'm always watching Ellen or Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil, or they're all full of these coping strategies for when you get loaded up with a steaming pile, right? You can find out those everywhere. I think the difference, though, between Jesus and Oprah or Dr. Phil is that Jesus isn't only interested in helping us get through our crappy day and go on. Jesus is also interested in us bearing fruit. Really, fruit bearing is the final point, and it's really the point of this parable. The manure is something that we all get, right? It happens to everyone. And Jesus wants to see that we end up utilizing it in a way that will end up producing fruit. Fruit bearing is a huge theme throughout the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Of course, in Genesis, we have a wonderful picture of God, the gardener, planting the garden and putting those humans in there to till it and keep it. And then all the way to Revelation, where you have the tree that's planted by the river of life and bringing forth fruit every month. It's kind of the fruit of the month club there in Revelation. And in between, you have the Psalms. Like the Psalms start with the first Psalm that talks about the righteous are like a tree planted by streams of water that bring forth good fruit in due season. Or you have the prophets, where one of their favorite metaphors, probably the most important metaphor in the prophets for the people of God, is a vineyard. And the whole point of a vineyard is to have grapes, right? So you can make wine and have wonderful, productive productive vineyard. So you see, and then coming into our tradition, that John Wesley had 3 questions for his preachers. And they were all lay people, by the way. Here were these 3 questions. Have they faith? Have they gifts? Have they fruit? Those were the 3 things that in one of one of our recent editions of the Upper New York Advocate was about increasing leadership capacity, which is something that we all need to look at in our lives as faithful people of God. So our question for today is not just about, I'm not really going to address the question of why manure happens. I think Job tried to get at, and there really isn't a good answer. It just does, and now we have to figure out how to deal with it. How do we get from people who have days, weeks, months, years when manure happens, as all people do, to become people who also bear fruit? How do we get from one to the other? Well, the book that we've been using for our book studies, called Tell It Like It is often about how people tell the story. And that's one way they get from dealing with that steaming pile to bearing fruit. And Daniel's, and many of the testimonies in this book that we've been reading have to do with manure happens and how did they deal with it. The death of someone close, a sudden illness, job stress, moving, lots of things that people had to deal with, and they had to struggle with them in their life of faith. And simply telling the story seemed to be an important part of the process. Telling the story to someone close. When I was a hospital chaplain over in the Ithaca area, I used to run a survivors of sudden death support group. And that's a very special, difficult situation. Maybe if some of you have been through it. I actually went through it this week. A cousin of mine died very suddenly on a hike in California. And what I'd said to her daughter this week was, you just have to find as many people as you can find to tell the story to. Just keep telling. She's a very quiet, introverted person, the daughter is. And this might be hard for you, Laura, but just find as many people as you can to tell the story to. Because it will help. It will help you to move and to become more healing. So I heard a story this week. You should come volunteer in the office. We do a lot of good talking, don't we, Georgia? Georgia's always here on Thursdays to help with the bulletin. And she was telling me a story this week about a similar thing where you and your friend Rena like to go up to Lake Placid and when you're up there, you often go to the same restaurant. You've gone there for many years, and years ago your moms used to come. And there's the same woman who works there, who's the dining room hostess. You know her name. Her name's Mary. You never exchanged last names, right? But, all the time your moms were with you, you talked about, she'd tell about her mom. And then after a while, your moms weren't with you anymore because they had passed away. And then you talked about that. And then this year, when you got there, something else happened, right? What did you ask her?
Well, we asked her how everyone was, and she said, I'm fine. And
Can you hear this? Is it our? Okay.
So we said, and Mom? And she said, I lost her in December. Well, her mom has been suffering with Alzheimer's, and we knew that. And slowly, things were getting far worse. She ended up, she said, sneaking out of the house at night. She found the car keys.
Oh.
She had an accident, and she only survived a couple of days.
Wow.
So anyway, we were having dinner, and Mary was free, and she came and sat with us and told us the whole story from beginning to end. She talked about a family friend, priest, who assisted them. And then when it was all over with, she stood up and she went, this is the first time I've ever told that story from beginning to end.
Wow.
And so anyway, it was
bless you.
I was reading the last 2 chapters of our book that had popped back into my head, and I thought, gosh, this was her testimony.
Yes, it was.
But, we would have been blessed just to hear of the story, but the fact that maybe this was one step closer to her grief.
That's right. You're healing.
So it was amazing that she
Thank you.
said that to us.
Well, the reason that she said it, I think, was because you plowed the ground for her, and you made it possible for her to be there with her story and to tell it to you, a relative stranger. You never knew each other's last names. You never saw each other outside of that context. But I think that's lay ministry. That is bearing fruit. When we are just able to be with another, maybe it's not someone you even really know, but just really be present to that person. That's empathy, isn't it? Empathy? Empathy is something that's hugely important when it comes to leadership in the community of faith. Sympathy kind of looks down and kind of says, oh, you poor dear. But empathy walks alongside and says, you and I can be companions on this journey, even through tough stuff. You and I can be present to each other, available to each other. What else do you want when it comes to a leadership position in the congregation? What other things are important to you? Anything else? I think empathy is right up there. For me, humility, being on a learning track, being able to say, you know what, I don't really know that yet, and I'm learning. And you know, if you look in leadership in the Bible, it's not about your age, right? Think about Jeremiah or Timothy. They were both really kids. Or it's not about your bank account, certainly. It's not about your education or the degrees behind your name. It's really about bearing fruit, which can happen at any age or any stage in one's life. It's about making one's faith a way of life, isn't it? And empathy is a huge part of that, I think. So, learning how to bear fruit is a lifelong process, isn't it? And it's all about following Jesus, in other words. It's about learning from this little 3-line parable about how to dig that manure that happens to everyone back into the soil of our life so that it can incorporate into what makes us grow and so that we can start to bear fruit. So leadership is about our heart and about how we have responded when manure happens. You know, we have to be patient with ourselves. It's hard sometimes to be patient. Be patient with ourselves and with others, as Mike mentioned. That's also in the parable. And it takes time to process what life hands us when manure happens. Give it another year, the farmer said. Give it another year. It might take that long for this person to incorporate that manure back into the soil. We need second chances a lot of times, third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances for the fruits of the Spirit to begin to manifest themselves in our lives. For the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, generosity, kindness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. These are the things that we want to show forth to the world. Amen? Amen. Thank you so much. And we're going to do that some more a little later when we have our baptism. But right now we're just going to stand and sing a song about faith where trees are blossoming. It's number 508 in the hymnal or on the screens. Now, if you are standing, you can remain standing. If you would like to pass the peace one to another in this congregation, some people like to walk all around the room, and some people like to give a hug, and some people just say good morning, or a fist bump, or elbow bump, or you can stay in your seats, and people will come and greet you. The peace of Christ be with all. very blessed this year to have 4 laity representing our church and our district at annual conference, and also general conference happened not long ago. So Emily is away. Emily Holcomb is actually being trained right now to help with a program at Sky Farm called SNAP.
In the depth of God's a nature of grace.
Special,
and friends,
special
God's
needs
choice has a
program.
purpose.
Oh, hold on
And
one
God's
second.
choice has an outcome. Throughout the course of history, God has been choosing women and men to carry out God's plan. And in this season, in this time, on this day, I want us to hear God chooses you.
Good morning. My name is Joel Holcomb, and I was lucky enough to be your annual conference delegate again this year. And what you see up there now is a picture of me representing you on the floor of annual conference this year. As resolutions are brought to the floor, they're discussed, there are motions made, there's back and forth. This is our time to plan for the year as a conference, what we're going to do and what is important for us as a conference. And as I'm sure you're well aware of, we don't always agree. Kind of a Methodist way, I think. We don't all go the same way, but we get to the same place. Some of the things that happened this year, for me, that were of vital importance and brought a new realization to the way God works at a larger church, as in the Upper New York Annual Conference. It works very similar to the way it operates here. One of the biggest issues is finance. You know, we're not the only church that feels this. The wider church does too. And one of the discussions that happened, and this was a long discussion, it was a day and a half, was about our budget, the annual budget for the Upper New York State Annual Conference. It was presented, and there's back and forth information exchanged, and people question why certain things are paid and certain things are not. Well, in the end, we have to approve a budget because we have to be able to move forward. But some of the things that happened around this budget, even though it's not balanced, because ministry shares across the denomination, across the conference, can't be paid at 100% because some churches don't have the ability to, and some choose not to. But we came to a realization that we need more transparency in our budget process. So for those of us who are numbers people, one of the resolutions that came through was that all conference staff salaries will be posted so that everyone knows what the bishop's package is, what the district superintendent's packages are, how much they make, and what that amount of money translates to bearing fruit, how they do their jobs. And that will be available for everyone to see. It's not going to be hidden away and unknown. Another piece is that this coming year, they're going to do a narrative budget. And a narrative budget, for those of us who aren't numbers people, means that you'll not only see the number, but you'll see what that actually does, what your ministry shares actually do on that item. So if it says, campus ministry, well, what does campus ministry really do? What does that do for me? How does that help our community? And there'll be an explanation of that. What I was presenting on the floor was part of further transparency. If you're not aware, we have nominations committee here at Christ Church. That's how you kind of get to do what I did by being the lay leader and being the lay delegate. You're nominated by somebody and you're elected. At the conference level, there's a nominations committee as well. That's how the conference lay leaders and conference positions are filled. Well, I realized a disparity, and that is that the districts don't have nominations committees. So I brought forward a motion
to say that we need districts to put together a nominations committee that consists of laity and clergy so that those nominations can come and represent the people more, as opposed to just having it become something from the district superintendent, so that it's not an appointment, that it's truly a nomination from the body. Now, while that motion didn't get passed on the floor at that moment, it did get referred back to the Rules Committee, and it did get referred to committee to be presented next year. So it is something that will move forward. And to me, it's of vital importance so that we have the same thing consistent from church level to district level to conference level. And it may mean a small thing for people, but to me it's really big. So thank you for allowing me to be your representative this year.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Volcom. I'll be speaking for myself and for Emily. I spoke with her, and she wanted to say what a great joy it was to be able to go to annual conference as a youth representative. In case you might have seen, I'm wearing a blue armband. The blue armband stands for witnessing the ordination service. It's to let people know that we stand behind all of the clergy and the lay people who are LGBTQ. And although we're still in a position where that's up in question right now with the Methodist Church, the armband stands for tears. Tears of joy as we celebrate those who are being ordained into the clergy, and tears of sorrow as we mourn those who are called by God but rejected by the church. Emily and her group of youth representatives, along with the three of us and many others, stood in solidarity as all of the new ordained ministers were coming in, and those who have already been ordained and are elders. And we stood there just to let them know that we're there supporting them. So Emily felt that was something very, very vital, that all does mean all. And we need to have equality throughout the church because we're all God's people. Now for my report. Being a new person to the annual conference, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea. But Adam Hamilton spoke. He was one of the keynote speakers. He was the person who wrote the forgiveness book that we used in this conference or this church. His new book was named Why? Making Sense of God's Will. And basically it's why do bad things happen to good people? I sat there in a puddle. Poor Melissa had to console me through the whole thing. And they put a Hallmark commercial up to boot, so, it was one of those things. This is something that I was hoping that at some point in time, if there's enough interest, that we can do this book study. Adam Hamilton actually gave me his copy because they had sold out. I had spoken to him about my condition, Chiari malformation, and thought quite heavily about why do good things happen to bad people? Did I do something wrong? Why do I have this condition? Why am I always in chronic pain? And I know a lot of you out there have had situations in your lives. You wonder, I'm a faithful person, I'm a good person. Why are these bad things happening? And this book actually delves into that and questions, not questions your faith, but questions why you feel this way, and tries to get you to be at peace with yourself and be at peace with some of the things that are happening so you can move through. So those were the things that I took away. He was very nice. I educated one more person about Chiari, and if anybody doesn't know, you can come talk to me after church. But he also thought that I gave him my email, and he said that he wanted to talk to me in more in depth about that in order to do testimonies for a next book that's upcoming. So I'll let Melissa talk.
Good morning. My name is Melissa. I was a voting member at the annual conference, and I was also sort of keeping tabs on the general conference, which is along the same lines. It's a lawmaking body, but instead of just being the churches in New York, it's churches from all over the world. And it was super interesting to me that the two conferences were actually pretty similar. One of the things that a lot of people were talking about online in regards to the general conference was how unified the church was during worship. And as soon as we were done singing and having a good time, everyone sort of withdrew into their own personal shell. And the debates were much more partisan than the worship was. And it's hard to watch people debate these things and wonder if the debates really matter. If we come into something with our minds completely made up, how willing are we to listen to other people? And that was something that was discussed a lot in both places. As someone who wasn't super familiar with a lot of the issues being brought up in our conference, it was really scary to vote because I realized that my voice could shape the church in a really big way. So I felt a lot of responsibility to really listen to everyone and try to do what I thought was best for the church. Hopefully I haven't ruined anything yet. Robert's rules were a big force in both. Sometimes I felt like things dragged on for way too long, and other times I was frustrated because I felt like not enough people had a chance to talk. So it's hard to balance that with a lot of people, and I had to give credit to the bishop for the annual conference because he was always making sure that everyone knew exactly what was going on for each vote. And that actually went better at our conference than at the general conference, which shouldn't be too surprising because general conference is way bigger. So going forward, I think we really need to work on connecting to other people in the Methodist Church, both locally and globally, because it's really hard to trust people that you don't know, and it's really hard to trust people to make laws on your behalf if you don't really believe that they're in it for the best, for what's best for everyone. So I hope that I can continue to sort of keep tabs on what's going on a more regional level, and that I can contribute to making this church and all of the Methodist churches a little bit more inclusive and more willing to take chances. Thank you.
Debbie's going to say a few words maybe if you want to, and then just finish our prayers.
Just a couple things about the general conference. I did want you to know that we did have a day of prayer here for all of the delegates from our upstate New York conference, and just for the general tone and feeling that the conference might be a microcosm of the kingdom. And it sounds like in the worship services that did happen. Like it does in upstate New York, being at conference for worship is a powerful, powerful thing. But the legislation is concerning, and there were some things at General Conference that offered hope, and some things that will hope that they're just the manure, and that it will make us stronger as we move ahead. One of the things that offers hope is that the bishops will be appointing a commission to study the issues of full inclusion, and that they will come back with a suggestion about how to move ahead that respects all so that we can stay in good connection. There are people who are looking to split the church over the issue, and we are prayerful and hopeful that there will be a way that will keep us in connection as God intends us to be. So, given the theme of today, I thought before we started the prayers, I'd like to set the stage for this. And that is that some years ago, my brother was traveling for work and became very, very ill. Got himself to the hospital and remembers nothing else. And he was in intensive care for 5 weeks in Asheville, North Carolina. And thank God he was in the hospital he was in, because they had incredibly knowledgeable and creative and resourceful medical assistance for him. But when I went to see him, he was on life support, and I didn't expect to do this, excuse me. But he was on life support, and I just remember holding his hand and being aware of the gift of breathing in and breathing out. And so today, I'd like to introduce you, if you don't know, to what's called the breath prayer. We'll modify it a little bit, but as you breathe in and breathe out, we'll pray. And so just take a deep breath of centering now. And breathe it out. And be aware that that breath is a gift. And as you breathe in, think about breathing in the gift of life. And as you breathe out whatever manure has happened recently or in the past. Creator God, we are aware as we breathe in and breathe out that all around us there's the sustenance and support that you have provided. The food, the air, the water for our bodies. The beauty and complexity and mystery for our souls. As we breathe in and breathe out, help us to breathe in your love and breathe out whatever troubles we've had. Help us to remember all those who suffer with fever, all those who are frozen with grief, all who rage against injustice, and all who perpetrate it. We ask that with our breathing and our living, that you will bring your healing, God, to us and to the world. We remember now the shooting that happened in the early hours of today. We breathe in your love for all of those families, and we breathe it back out for healing of the pain that they suffer. We remember Muhammad Ali and his family, thankful for the witness that he provided. We breathe in your love for all of our Muslim brothers and sisters, especially in this holy month of Ramadan. We breathe in the notion of one God and breathe out a belief that you include all in our different forms of prayer. We ask for healing for those among us who have suffered grief in this past week. Particularly, we ask for Marty and her family, for her cousin Peggy's husband and son and daughter. As we breathe in, we're grateful for Peggy's life, and as we breathe out, we breathe your love on those that are grieving. We ask for special prayer for Jacqueline, that she might feel your love. We take a moment now to think of all those who are listed in our prayer lists, that you might bring to them your peace. We ask for healing for those around the world who suffer from violence, from malnutrition, from things that are solvable. We ask you to help us to find the way to bring your love into the world. And now together, we pray the prayer that your Son gave to us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Would the ushers please bring forward the gifts? Gracious God, we ask that you take these gifts that we have offered, knowing that they are initially gifts from you. And we pray that you use them to your grace and glory and the loving eye towards the world. Amen.
Little baptismal family back. We baptized a little girl, Alexandria Mahler, a couple weeks ago. Little Elijah couldn't be with us that day, and so they came back for part 2. So we've already done a lot of the questions, and you've already made some promises to this family, to Scott and to Megan, and a little Alexandria, and little Elijah. So we're just going to bless the water and you two are buds, aren't you? You seem like get along really well together. Welcome back. I'm glad you could be here this time, Elijah. So we present, let's see here, Elijah Joseph Chadwick Muller, who is, as I said, Megan's son and Scott's. And come on there, big boy. Want to come see the water? Want to come help me bless the water? What do you think? So let's go over here and we'll have a prayer about this water. What do you think? Dear God, we just ask that you bless this gift of water and he who receives it, that in the pattern of Jesus' love, you may grow up to be, and you can shine forth to be God's representative in this world. In Jesus' name. So you ready for this? You want to fill this water? It's a little, you want to feel it? Do you like your bath? You don't have to. Ready? I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. You are signed and sealed this day as Christ's representative in the world. Amen. Beautiful hair you have. That's a big smile. Let's just do the one blessing at the end here so that we can all say that together if you go to page 43. We give thanks for all that God has already given you, and we welcome you in Christian love as members together with you in the body of Christ in this congregation of the United Methodist Church. We renew our covenant faithfully to participate in the ministries of the church by our prayers, our presence, our gifts, and our service, and our witness, that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. So the God of all grace, who calls us to eternal glory in Christ, establish and strengthen you all by the power of the Holy Spirit, that we may live in grace and peace. Amen. Well, you are just such a really well-behaved little guy. And Alexandria, you are too, his sweetheart. Blessings on you all. And our hymn is number 2153, I'm going to live so God can use me. Welcome, welcome. This is a certificate. In such a way that you lay the groundwork for others to share what's going on in their lives when manure happens in peace and in love. Amen.